Hello and welcome once again to a Suidlanders chat program here on the Suidlanders media channel with me, Marius Greyling, and Simon Roche. This will be part 4, so if you haven't seen part 3, part 2, and part 1, please go have a look just to get some perspective of the type of chat that me and Simon are having over the last couple of days. And yeah, Simon, anything interesting happening in Russia or a story or two you can tell us?
No, there's not much that I can tell you. I had a lovely chat with a woman, Valeria, in the Einstein Cafe this morning, where I go to meet, because it's central, go to meet our host, Dimitri, almost every weekday, and where the Wi-Fi is very good, because to get YouTube, you have to have a VPN and you should be on Wi-Fi rather than on using phone data. So I'm told, and it turns out to be the case. Now I'm not struggling with YouTube anymore, as long as I'm down there. Anyway, Valeria and our lovely lady had a nice long chat this morning, and one of the things that we got onto was the cost of living here in Russia and how it's increasing. Um, to to give you some idea, land in Russia, even though they've got trillions of square meters of it, is quite expensive, not necessarily only in Moscow and St. Petersburg, the two big expensive centers of Russia, the notoriously expensive cities of Russia. But even in very much smaller cities like Arkhangelsk, where I was 3 weeks ago, and where I had a thoroughly enjoyable time on the White Sea, she reckons that bond interest rates at the moment, mortgage bond interest rates for people buying property, vary between 25 and 35%, if you can even believe it. And that is apparently, or allegedly, in her mind, I'm not suggesting that she's a senior economist, but anecdotally speaking, she, as a housewife, said that it's because so much of the nation's wealth is being deployed to the war that there isn't a superabundance of money. So the country is doing very well. To give you some idea, last year, Russia's debt as a share of its GDP, and we've spoken before, I've made videos in which I've explained to people that the very notion of measuring debt to GDP is fallacious. It's a fallacy. It's nonsense. It's absolutely stupid. But it has become fashionable in the West in recent years, presumably to trick people into misunderstanding the levels of debt of governments in the West. By making a completely false comparison, people are misguided in their understanding of how severe is a country's debt. Nevertheless, uh, for whatever it's worth, Russia's debt as a share of its GDP, in spite of the fact that it's at war, fell last year.
Wow.
So, generally speaking, the country, the economy, the finances of the land are doing very, very well. And you can see that wealth. There is a superabundance of wealth in Moscow and St. Petersburg and even in Arkhangelsk. You see Mercedes S-classes, Geländewagens, Mercedes Maybachs, Mercedes AMGs, and so on and so forth, like you see in no other place in the world. However, the chickens are apparently coming home to roost, and the pressure point in the country's economy and financial system is becoming the loans market. There is a shortage of money that is available for loans. Therefore, banks are charging ridiculously high prices. And therefore, most people, even people with good jobs, are struggling to afford housing. And that's something that I've come across over and over and over again. So what's happening is that a class of landlords is being built of people who do have money and are investing their money in accommodation and renting it out. It's really quite sad that people who are doing well can't buy their own teeny tiny little communist flat. You know, the overwhelming accommodation in Russia is not a private home, but a communist or post-communist flat in a 5-story, 8-story, 12-story building, a small flat. They're all very small. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're small. It seems to be very sad to me that just as Russia is doing so terribly well, the ordinary person who is also doing well, I'm not talking about street sweepers, I'm talking about people with nice jobs, making nice money, can't dream of buying even such a flat, much less an actual house with a garden. So that's a bit of a heart sore for me, because really I'm very much seduced by the very good features of this country by and large. But that's just an anecdote and aside, Marius. Let's move on to serious stuff.
Yeah, Simon. Sorry. In part 3, you said you've got something to tell us. So, I mean, go ahead. Go ahead. I wasn't sure where we're going with this.
Yes, Marius, I thought that it might be nice to make a short video on the idea of sleeper cells.
Oh, yeah.
As you know, Iran threatened the USA with the activation of sleeper cells. And in retaliation for the USA strike in the very wee hours of the Sunday morning, the 22nd of June. And apparently, allegedly, supposedly, some very, very big mainstream media outlets are reporting on a sort of a frantic search by the FBI for sleeper cells in the USA. And I'm reminded of the anecdote told by Amaryllis Fox in her interview with Tucker Carlson of the 3 rehearsals of attacks on the USA by North Korea in 2014. Now, of course, those were not necessarily sleeper cell attacks. I'll re-describe them in a minute. But it seems to me that they're very closely related phenomena, and the two topics sort of bleed into one another. Amaryllis Fox revealed in an interview with Tucker Carlson last year, anybody can look it up, that in 2014, over the span of, they believed, I should mention, Amaryllis Fox is a former CIA agent, if that's the correct word. And nobody has contradicted her story. There have been no great big denials that have come out. Apparently, this is a story that is more or less accepted and pointless to deny. In 2014, a North Korean satellite flew over the east coast of the USA in a very, very particular arc, which allegedly revealed that its only purpose could have been to rehearse an electromagnetic pulse attack on the USA. Now, I have no idea. I completely lack the acumen to say why one arc is for spying and one is for electromagnetic pulses and one is for monitoring the weather. I've no idea, but apparently it was quite definitive that a foreign satellite observing that arc or trajectory, if you like, above the USA would only have observed that trajectory for the purposes of an electromagnetic pulse attack or rehearsal of attack. And that they found very alarming. Lo and behold, if I remember the story perfectly, I might get a day wrong here or there. The following day in California, outside one of the big California towns, I forget which town. I'm tempted to say Sacramento, but I could be completely mistaken. Outside of that town or that city, one of the major cities of California, there is a unusually large electrical grid station that serves that city, and it's apparently quite well known for its size. For whatever reason, that particular node in the electricity grid of that region of California is very large, as some electrical nodes, be it in South Africa or Britain or Australia or Uganda, are large. So it's a particularly important node. Was infiltrated by guys behaving sort of like ninjas. I don't think that that's the word she used, but she did have a little bit of a cheeky smile on her face when she described how these guys were all dressed in black and they were leaping over the walls and cutting holes in fences and taking out panes of glass from windows with special diamond cutters and putting their hands through and opening the windows and using oxyacetylene torches to cut burglar guards off, and how they'd managed to shut down the CCTV cameras, but some were left on, and that's how they know what happened. And the alarm system was infiltrated and hacked previously. So the security guards at the time weren't alerted to this penetration, if that's the right word. And these guys ended up shutting down, sabotaging the electrical grid very, very effectively. And she didn't describe how, but they were able to subsequently conclude, apparently, that these were North Korean agents. 2 weeks later, they then discovered a ship carrying missiles that would have done its part of the rehearsal. Mm-hmm. It's part of the program of operations on day number 3. So on day number 1, you've got the EMPs. On day number 2, you've got the electricity being shut down. And on day number 3, a vessel which subsequently turned out to be a North Korean asset, probably flying a false flag, or being a North Korean asset only in the sense that it was clandestinely rented from some unknowing vessel owner in Liberia or who knows, Brazil, but nevertheless deployed for North Korean ends, a vessel docked in a harbor in, if I'm not mistaken, people are welcome to go and check the facts, in somewhere in Oregon, just north of California. And it was meant to be there for a certain number of days. It paid the necessary berthing fees, the port fees, and paid for the necessary services, bunker oil, and so on. And then it went quiet. After 2 weeks, the port captain sent people to the vessel to say, hey, you paid for 10 days, you've been here for 11. What's the story? And they discovered the vessel completely deserted. These guys had managed to flit away like ghosts in the night, and nobody knew where they were. Lo and behold, they discovered in the hold of the vessel a number of apparently North Korean cruise missiles set up to be fired from the hold into the USA. I forget the number of, I don't, in fact, perhaps she didn't mention the number, but let's say it was a nice juicy number like 10, 12, 16, or 30. She never mentioned the size of the vessel. That was something really quite tremendous. And I thought with this anecdote, or these three connected anecdotes, we might chat a little bit about the very concept, Marius, of thousands of Soviet, now Russian agents that may be in the United States of America waiting for a call to perpetrate all sorts of acts of sabotage in the event of need, or North Koreans, Iranis, for that matter, Americans, or American agents from, especially, I would surmise, Central Asia, who are now living in Russia, just waiting for a call on a secret telephone with a special code for them to go out and perpetrate some heinous act. I don't wish it, but it's an intriguing thing to talk about and think about, I think, Marius.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up brilliantly, Simon. I mean, we've seen the movies, we've seen the TV series about these sleeper cells, and that they stay in places for 20, 30 years before they get activated. They have a family and kids, and then they've got this mental struggle about duty to your old country and how you're living now, and we've seen it a lot. But to think about it in a reality's perspective of that, it definitely, there is something like a sleeper cell or sleeper cells across the world from different countries. And like you said, it's fascinating. But one of the videos that I've seen yesterday is that a liberal and a Republican taking on each other on live TV of the sleeper cells things, and the Republican telling the liberal, "You see, it's your fault. This Joe Biden open border nonsense. Now we've got so many people living in America that we can't account for, and we are not sure what is their true purpose here," and so forth. But then I thought immediately about, listen here, but all the first world countries has done this over the last 2, 3 years, opened their borders. So sure, I mean, yeah, a sleeper cell could live there for many years, or they could have been inserted now in this last 2 or 3 years with the open border policy across the world.
I have no doubt about it in my mind whatsoever, Marius. I think that it is not a likelihood or a probability, but it's an absolute certainty that if we do see a major conflict in the years ahead of us, such as some of us believe to be emerging, there will certainly be rogue actors and what's known as fifth columns. The English expression fifth column, well, I suppose it could be used in any language, but it stems from a civil war in which a commander was asked, "How many columns do you have to march on the city?" He said, "I have columns of soldiers." He said, "I have 5. I have 4 advancing from outside the city, and I have a full column of sympathizers within the city." And of course, we all know the story of the Trojan horse, the Greeks giving the Trojans a gift during the war of 3,000 years ago. I could be ever so mistaken, but I think it was in the 1100s BC, between Greece and Troy, allegedly over the beauty queen Helen. The horse was given to the Trojans as a gift, and the Greeks had secreted inside of the horse a contingent of men who then jumped out in the dead of night to open the gates of the city so that the rest of the Greek forces could rush in.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here, operators from within. I can't help but wonder what might they do. I mean, presumably you would have levels of such operators. Presumably, you would have, let's say, you would have nuclear bombs in suitcases or something like that, hidden under buildings for decades and decades, just waiting for somebody to press a button with a radio signal to activate a nuclear bomb. I mean, presumably, if you're going to have nuclear missiles, if you've decided, as India and Pakistan and Israel and North Korea and France and Great Britain and Russia and the USA have done, then you would also decide to have nuclear bombs that are delivered by other means than missile.
Yeah.
And what could be better than planting something underground in New York or Washington? So those would be your A-team guys. You would only resort to them if all was lost. But if you were to play the game as, say, Iran has been playing it in recent days, you wouldn't resort to that right away. You would box with the gloves on to begin with.
Yeah.
So I suppose you could have guys who would just blow up a bridge, maybe, or I don't know, who have the secret codes to a chemical factory, and they would make the machines, work too fast or something like that, or the mixtures go wrong, and you would have a giant chemical explosion that would threaten an enormous city that would have to be evacuated, maybe a city adjacent to a very important naval port or Air Force base or something like that, so that the airmen couldn't fly their planes. They'd have to run away to safety to evacuate the whole area. Perhaps, I don't know, but it's intriguing to think about it. And I think that if we had better access to this, all of the secret goings on in the world right now, we would be talking about particular events that are transpiring now already. I should think that now already some of the peculiar goings on in the world might be being activated by people who've been hiding for, as you say, decades, in anticipation of a conflict between two nuclear superpowers, which is not exactly what's happening now, but it's not far from it. I mean, they're using proxies at the moment, but if you consider Ukraine, for instance, that is NATO. NATO is operating those HIMARS and ATACMS and Taurus and Scalp and Storm Shadow missile systems. The Ukrainians simply do not possess the codes to those, and you never give them away under any circumstances. It's just not the way that it works. Neither do they possess the reconnaissance and target acquisition information. So, yeah, you could say that Russia and the USA are already at war, in which case there's no doubt in my mind that it's probably some shenanigan in the US bond market or in currency trading or in who knows what, train timetables, for all that I know, that is instigated as part of this broader conflict that's being waged between these two nuclear superpowers at the moment, Marius.
Yeah, Simon, and maybe you can give a bit more clarity, or maybe you know it better than I do, but our Senior van Rensburg also spoke about the secret armies in Europe, I think, that will be activated to do something. I can't remember the whole phrase that was used to describe that. But I mean, if you think about secret armies, then you think about sleeper cells, people that's not seen as a threat inside your country already, and then all of a sudden they are a threat.
Yeah, well, for those people who don't know, uh, our leader, Mr. Gustav Müller, and founder of Suidlanders, is very much inspired, as we all are. I don't know any Suidlander that's not a fan of Uncle Nicholas van Rensburg, the famous Afrikaner prophet, who born in 1862 and died in 1926, I believe, who prophesied all sorts of things, including what you've just mentioned, Marius. I'm not an expert on that particular prophecy.
Yeah.
They're just too many to understand very well. He made over, or gave over, 700 prophecies based upon visions that he received, and over 400 of them have manifested, including some prophecies that were absolutely absurd in the minds of ordinary people at the time that he was alive. So when, for instance, he said, a day will come when a black man sits on the throne of South Africa, he was ridiculed as an idiot, because at that time in the colonial world, there was simply no possibility of it ever occurring in any country in Africa. And he did speak about that secret armies, and I suppose, Marius, that's what he must have meant. You know, on the face of it, I can't imagine what else he could have meant. So, yeah, perhaps we're going to see a lot of that sort of thing in the years to come. Saboteurs and spies and infiltrators, as we've experienced so abundantly in Suidlanders in recent years. All sorts of agents of the state being deployed with all sorts of long stories to Suidlanders, coming out of the blue, pretending to be Suidlanders' greatest friends, most sincere leaders, most terrific human beings, only later to be revealed as spies and agents. It's a very similar thing indeed.
Yeah. All right, Simon, do you have anything to add? Or will we do another video maybe tomorrow or the day after again, as things unfold further with the politics around the world and the wars and the things that's going on?
Yeah, I think that we should, Marius. We should make hay while the sun shines. And as you know, it's extremely difficult for me to record my own videos and then upload them. So for me to be productive while in the USA, it's best for me to do video interviews with you, which you're then recording on that end, and you can publish them very easily. But it's far trickier here in Russia. I must have about 30 good quality videos that I've simply never been able to upload to you guys. And I might travel at any moment.
Yeah.
So when I do travel, then we're going to be disrupted all over again. I was told yesterday, I don't believe that this is true, but I was told by somebody who is fantastically well connected, super duper well connected, that my application to visit a sensitive part of Russia is sitting on the desk of one of the very top, I would never dare to mention his name in a video, people. And I thought to myself, nah, man, that must be an exaggeration. But the guy speaks better English than I do. So certainly it wasn't an error in communication.
Yeah.
He insists that the man himself is scrutinizing my application to travel. I was going to say something. I've lost my train of thought, but oh, that's right. So I mentioned it to somebody else who's very, very clued up. I said, this is nonsense, man. That this guy is reviewing my application. He said, no, it's not nonsense. If so-and-so said that so-and-so said, then you know that is a fact. So I'm on absolute tenterhooks here. Nearly, I'm on my last nerve, waiting to hear whether it'll be approved. But if not, then I'll get on with something else. I'll undertake another terrific adventure that I think will produce some very, very, very good quality contacts and connections and associations and videos and interviews for the time that we're here in Russia. So let's until I have to move again, let's do all the videos that we can. Let's do one tomorrow and perhaps 2 on Thursday if I'm still in Moscow.
Great, great. Simon, I hope you have a lovely day further, lovely evening, and yeah, then we'll speak tomorrow again.
Cheerio, Marius, and goodbye, and God bless everybody. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.